boiled peanuts, Southern hospitality, the World Series champions Atlanta Braves, grits, Coca-Cola. Y'all, these are some of the great things about Georgia, and you've seen me make a ton of videos talking about how great this state is, and well, like anything, of course there are some bad things. We've covered why you should move to Georgia, but what are some of the reasons why you wouldn't consider moving here? And before you come at me, this channel covers mostly the metro Atlanta suburbs, which is where a majority of people are relocating. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 284,000 people moved into the state of Georgia in 2019. We had the 5th highest increase in residents in the whole country. The 6 states that people left the most to move to Georgia were Florida, Texas, South Carolina, Tennessee, North Carolina, and of course, California. Now, there is no way to talk about all the reasons that are specific to every single city and part of Georgia, but these are some of the overall things you're going to want to consider when making your move to the North Metro Atlanta area of Georgia. So let's talk about the weather. It can get hot and humid. In fact, the humidity is what makes such a difference. You can have a mild 70s day, but if you have high humidity, well, you are going to be sweating buckets and buckets of sweat. It feels so uncomfortable. You're gonna hate it. No one likes it. I would like to meet someone that enjoys humidity, actually. I don't understand. It is miserable. And while the summers are hot, we do mostly get 4 seasons throughout the year if you are in Atlanta or north. Now, as someone who grew up in South Georgia, we got 2 seasons, hot and not so hot. I enjoy living here and getting to wear sweaters in the winters and anxiously watching the forecast for a hint of snow throughout the winter. We usually get it about one time. And yet, the weather can be unpredictable, and nothing says quite like it has this week. So I'm filming this video in the 2nd week of December. We started off in the 70s, dropped to the mid 50s. We had nice toasty fires a couple of nights. And then yesterday we had a roaring thunderstorm and it was so humid in the low 70s. Knowing how to dress for the weather on any given week, especially outside of the summer, can be tricky. In fact, in the spring and fall, we have a saying here that if you don't like the weather, wait about 15-20 minutes, it's going to change. Traffic is another huge headache, and I'm not talking about Atlanta traffic specifically. Yes, that can be a pain. When you live in the suburbs and you need to commute into Atlanta, or let's say drive to the airport, it can take you anywhere from about 1 to 2 hours depending upon Atlanta traffic, depending upon where you live. Is there a rhyme or reason to this? Of course, you can factor in rush hour, which most people tend to try to avoid when you're commuting, but let's face it, it happens all throughout the day. Sometimes you understand why it happened because there's a wreck, and sometimes you never see anything and you're like, why? Atlanta ranks 9th in total congestion delays for 2020, according to a study conducted by Texas A&M. But I hear you. But Sarah, I'm not going to commute into Atlanta. I'm going to live in the suburbs. Well, remember all of those people that are moving into Georgia that we talked about earlier in the video? All of these suburbs are experiencing unprecedented growth, which comes with new home developments. Trust me, you're going to see them everywhere. New shopping centers, grocery stores, and more. And thus, the cities need the infrastructure to support it, which means widening roads, creating new exits off the interstate. So unless you're moving to a small rural town in Georgia, you are going to experience traffic headaches and frustrations from time to time, and especially if you're taking advantage of the airport or things to do in Atlanta. Speaking of people moving to Georgia, in part, some people are choosing to move to Georgia for the more conservative outlook many Georgians have, often leaving blue states for Georgia's red state. We talked about California. But are we a red state? After the election of 2020, Georgia turned blue for the first time since 1992, with both Senate seats and the electoral votes for the presidency going towards the Democrats. Now, I'm sure you have heard about this, right? Unless you've been living under a rock, Georgia played a huge part in the 2020 election. So with Georgia typically being a non-issue on the political map over the past few decades, that 2020 election has changed that, and it's not going to let up anytime soon, as things are just now heating up for 2022 and beyond. This isn't a personal political debate or an endorsement one way or the other. For many people, there are strong feelings around this issue, and we have seen some people make life decisions like where they want to live based upon political affiliations and beliefs. Now, another factor to consider in Georgia turning blue, or purple, as many like to say, is the growing diversity of Georgia's population. According to the 2020 census, the share of Georgia residents who identify as white and non-Hispanic shrank to 50%, the lowest on record, signifying that the state's transition to majority-minority may have already happened in the year since the census was taken. Speaking of diversity, we have a diverse population of bugs and animals. I'm sure you have heard Georgia's reputation for gnats and mosquitoes. Thankfully, we have something called the gnat line in Georgia, which is an imaginary line, but the Georgia gnat line is the unofficial dividing line between where those gnats are and less numerous. It generally runs from about Columbus to Macon to Augusta, and if you find yourself south of this line, well, you're in for it. Gnats love humidity and sandy soils. Thankfully, if you're watching this channel, you're more than likely considering a move to the metro Atlanta area, and you're not going to have to deal with them. You will have to deal with mosquitoes, although in my opinion, they aren't anywhere near as bad as how they are below the gnat line. These mosquitoes can get quite large, and living near things like ponds will make it worse. And speaking of large bugs, let's talk about the Joro spider. Along with the people that have recently moved here, so have these Joro spiders. They are an invasive species, and they're native to East Asia. And it's believed that these spiders arrived in a shipping container that was dropped off somewhere along Interstate 85 in Georgia, along with all the other things that just fall off of trucks and things. They have thrived in Georgia because of our similar climate to East Asia, and unfortunately, they are here to stay. Y'all, they are annoying, they're huge, they make these big webs very fast, and they're everywhere. So I jokingly, when I was showing clients back in October, I said, oh, nature is, decorating for Halloween. They're massive spiders. Like I said, during the summer and fall, you are sure to see these webs. They're large, neon-colored spiders. You cannot miss them. The good thing is they're not a threat to humans or pets, and generally they don't bite unless they feel threatened, and they're usually easy to kill. However, they come back very, very quickly. Another thing that is a pain when living in Georgia is pollen. If you suffer from allergies, well, buckle up, Buttercup, and stockpile the Allegra. I'm talking to myself. I have a stockpile of Allegra and nose spray. Spring and fall are typical times when pollen is at its worst. In fact, you're going to find that the weather forecasters here touch on the pollen count each day during these seasons. But let's face it, you're not going to need to know what the pollen count is, because all you have to do is go outside and look at your car, look at your deck. You're going to see that everything is going to be covered in a light yellow dusting of what looks like snow, but it is in fact pollen, and we jokingly call it here southern snow. So get your pressure washers out and be prepared to wash your car frequently during this time period. And speaking of this, we often get asked from clients whenever they're looking at homes here, like, why not all homes have window screens on their windows? Well, it's for this very reason. Whenever the weather is typically nice, spring, fall, where you would want to have your windows open and enjoy the nice breeze, well, that, my friends, is when the pollen is everywhere. You do not want that pollen coming into your house. So most people simply don't use screens at all. They don't open their windows. And another thing to consider about Georgia has one of the lowest minimum wages in the country at $5.15 an hour. However, the federal minimum wage makes the effective minimum wage in Georgia $7.25. This makes Georgia one of 7 states that have either a lower state minimum wage than the federal standard. That's not good. Although, according to US News, Georgia ranks number 12 compared to other states' economies, and CNBC ranks Georgia as the 6th best state for business in 2021. So take that with what you will. There you have it, real reasons not to move to Georgia. Now, of course, there's a ton of great reasons and other things you should consider, which we cover here on this channel. If your family is considering making a move, let's talk. You can find our contact information below. We're a real estate team that specializes in helping people from all over the country relocate. And if you haven't checked out these videos on moving to Georgia, make sure you check them out.